Am I wrong for not allowing my girlfriend to be a stay-at-home mom even though I could afford to? My 29 male, girlfriend 23 Emily, and I have been dating for 4 years. My 29 male, girlfriend 23 female, Emily and I have been dating for 4 years and have lived together since last October. She graduated from college last year and was able to get a job that paid an okay salary for an entry-level position. She didn't like the job too much, but she mentioned that it had good opportunities for promotions and would look good on her resume. So she hoped to move on to more interesting work that she is more passionate about soon. This January, my girlfriend became pregnant with a girl by accident. It was unplanned and we considered abortion but decided to keep the baby. We have since been preparing for birth. We have good relationships with both my and her parents. Both set of parents have said they'd be willing to babysit our daughter for free. Recently, my girlfriend told me that she would like to quit her job after the baby is born to be a stay-at-home mom. Her reasons for doing so were the following. 1. She's getting very attached to our baby even though it's not born yet. And the idea of dropping her off to a babysitter, even if that babysitter is one of our parents who we all know would take good care of her, it makes her want to cry. Her mom was a stay-at-home mom, which allowed her to have home-cooked meals every day and do lots of fun stuff that she couldn't do with the babysitter. She wants to provide the same experience for our daughter. 3. She no longer likes her job and is unsure if she wants to even continue down the same career path. She regrets her major in accounting and wishes she had majored in something she is passionate about instead of something that just makes good money. 4. I recently got a promotion to a supervisor position in my company that came with a pay raise of nearly $40,000, so I can afford to support her and our daughter. 5. She didn't say it, but one of her friends recently gave birth and became a stay-at-home mom, so I'm sure that influenced her decision. She also tried to convince me by saying that she could cook all of my favorite meals and do all of the chores. I said no for a few reasons. 1. We were planning to buy a house in the next couple of years, and with me being the only one working, that would set us back years in getting one. 2. I grew up poor. During my entire childhood, I only went to the movie theaters a couple of times because my parents could not afford to take me out to do fun stuff like that often, for example. I got a pair of new shoes once a year and bought my clothes from Walmart. With both of our incomes, we have been able to enjoy a very nice lifestyle. We both drive nice cars, go shopping, order nice restaurants or the movies regularly, and have also been on some nice trips and vacations. With only one income, we would have to curtail our spending by a lot. With both of us working, we can keep our current lifestyle even after the baby. There are many things I still want to do and places I want to go to, and we would have to put all of our life plans on hold for several years since my income alone would not be enough. So we would have to wait until I got even more raises or saved for a long time. 3. I just don't want the pressure of being the only person to provide for my family. Also, while telling her no, I might have said that the reason why she was feeling so attached to the baby was pregnancy hormones and they would soon pass. So yeah, not my best choice of words. I mentioned this to my friends and family. I've been told by some people that a true man provides for his family. That I'm evil for wanting to separate a mother from her baby when I could afford to let her stay at home. So, am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for telling my mom she married a little bitch after she complained about me marrying an accountant? I'm getting married in June to Kate, and I wasn't aware until recently that my mom had a problem with her. I mean, they are very different. Kate is quiet, reserved, practical, and my mom lives in a fantasy world, but they seemed okay. For some context, my mom and I aren't that close. I don't think she actually wanted to be a mother, so the relationship has always felt fake. She is married to Ryan, who is a decent enough guy and treats her very well, but he seems to have some issues. Bullet point number 1. He is a big shot lawyer who never loses. So one time he did lose a case, he punched a wall and then didn't speak all evening, wouldn't eat, etc. He bought a microwave so he could heat up his own food and not have to go into the staff room at his office because he can't stand people saying hi to him. This is only after he stopped letting his assistant heat it up because my mom said she was probably touching it to gauge the temperature. He almost never speaks to Kate or I and says he doesn't owe anyone words. He is a stage 12 clinger who has to have at least one hand on my mom at all times. He was telling my mom how if she would just learn to golf, he could get rid of his friends and never have to speak to another person outside of work again. Last bullet point, he grew up poor and is now super annoying about his money. I've never said anything because my mom clearly thinks the sun shines out of his ass. Anyways, my mom recently sat me down and said she is concerned about my future. She said that Kate is, quote, nice enough, but so boring and has no hobbies or sense of humor. And she is worried I'm settling for ... She took a long, dramatic breath and then said, an accountant. She said no one actually wants to marry an accountant. I was pissed that she was going after Kate and said, quote, but you married a little bitch. Ryan was in the house and heard it. He just made a face, but my mom exploded and told me to get out. And when I didn't move, she shoved me. She said I can, quote, get the fuck out if I'm going to disrespect her husband like that, and said the stuff she said about Kate wasn't that bad, but I made it personal. I guess I feel a little bad as I went for Ryan when he wasn't doing anything. She might not be coming to the wedding now. Am I the asshole?
My husband badmouthed me to his ex behind my back, so I pretended to be the perfect wife for months, then abandoned him in the middle of the night and ruined his life. I vividly remember the day I discovered that my husband Josh was texting his ex. My heart dropped and horror washed over me as I realized he wasn't just cheating, he was doing something a lot worse. He was badmouthing me to the extreme to Rachel, saying how terrible I am in bed, how piggish I am, and even disclosing my past trauma to her. In response, she laughed and insulted me too, the two of them nonstop talking about how fat, unattractive, and awful I am at everything. I burst into tears reading these texts dating back months, and just as I was putting his phone down, Josh came out of the shower. I quickly ran off to the bathroom, wiping my tears and spending some time in the toilet trying to compose myself. When I came out of the bathroom, I saw him on his phone laughing, presumably texting her. I wanted to scream and shout at him and call him a filthy liar, a disgusting, pathetic excuse for a man, but I resisted the urge to do so. The days that followed were some of the hardest I had ever endured. Every time Josh touched me, I had to fight the urge to recoil. His hands, which once brought me comfort, now felt like a betrayal. Each time we were intimate, I let my mind wander elsewhere and focused on anything but him, because if I did, I'd instantly get nauseous knowing he was probably going to text Rachel directly after stating just how awful the intimacy was. No wonder he went into the bathroom with his phone right after every single time. I spent days faking a smile every time I saw him. I continued doing the household chores as if nothing had happened. I made his favorite meals, kept the house spotless, and even surprised him with small gifts, all while my heart was breaking because I knew that he was probably laughing about everything I did to his ex. There was a method to my madness, however, because this was my first step in totally breaking him. A few days in, I had concocted a plan to totally destroy him, and for stage 1 of this plan, I needed to act like the perfect wife. What really sickened me about the entire ordeal, however, was that Josh acted as if everything was perfect, maybe even better than perfect. I couldn't believe that he was affectionate, considerate, all while mocking me to Rachel. During the day, he would compliment my cooking, thank me for keeping the house clean, and even bring me flowers from time to time. He'd cuddle me and hug me, tell me he is the luckiest man alive to have me, and that he wouldn't ever trade me for the world. But then when alone, he'd text Rachel about how ugly I am. Late at night, when Josh was asleep, I would often unlock his phone and screenshot their conversations. Rachel loved the attention she was getting from Josh. She would eagerly jump at the opportunity to say Josh deserves so much better, and that she would never treat her husband like that. There were whole threads of messages from her attacking everything about my looks and my insecurities, with her saying she would be able to run a household and still manage to take care of herself and would never develop such nasty cellulite. She constantly tried to position herself as the better option, and I had it all documented in my phone. It hurt to see all the negative comments on me, especially with my husband indulging in it too. And then it happened. One night when I unlocked his phone, I saw that my husband had stooped to a new level, one so low that I couldn't even fathom it was possible. He sent her an unclothed pic of me while I was sleeping. The two of them laughed their butts off about it, editing the picture, zooming in on every one of my insecurities and insulting my body. Rachel stated that she would never let herself look like a seal, while laughing at me, and Josh chimed in calling me a cow. I almost lost it. This event almost made me forget my entire plan, wake him up and roar at him, but I managed to keep my composure and stick to the plan. However, what they did had left me with irreversible damage. I would constantly look in the mirror and hear their comments running through my head. At night, after documenting another batch of cruel messages, I would sit alone, tears streaming down my face as I wondered how long I could keep this up. I tried to not let it affect my self-esteem, and I reminded myself why I was doing this. I knew if I was going to get away from Josh, I knew I'd have to stay focused. While I was suffering on the inside, I continued to play the perfect wife role. After long, tiring days at work, I would come home and cook his favorite dinners, no matter how exhausted I felt. The house was spotless. I showered him with affection and initiated almost every night. He absolutely loved it, and my plan was working to perfection. As the weeks progressed, I saw the messages he had between him and Rachel do a 180. She would try to throw a jab at me and sarcastically ask, "Is your wife still treating you like the king you are?" And Josh would reply to her telling her yes. As time went on in his messages to her, he would brag about me and say that I am actually doing an amazing job at everything, that I have actually managed to lose weight and am looking attractive now, and that yes, indeed, I am still treating him like a king. He would even send her pictures of the food that I would cook for him. Rachel did not like that. She would try to mask her jealousy and insecurity with backhanded compliments like, "She's surprisingly good at cooking for someone who doesn't have much else going for her," or, "You definitely have to give her credit for trying so hard," even though the results weren't always great. Josh would participate in the ridicule beforehand, but not anymore. Even when Rachel tried to shade me, asking Josh if he thought my behavior was genuine, he defended me. "I don't know what changed," he wrote, "but I'm not complaining. She's been incredible lately." Each time I read those words, I felt a mix of joy and sadness. Joy because my plan was succeeding, and sadness because the man I once loved was now a stranger to me. He told her that I had been trying very hard lately, and had to give me credit for that at least. And Rachel would question why he was making excuses for me when he was just dogging me out not even a month ago. They even started arguing about me, with her always, questioning why all of a sudden Josh was defending me. He started to pull away from Rachel, and I could see the rift forming between them. This was extremely apparent when Rachel tried to make fun of me to him in regards to my body, something she has done many times, and something that Josh has gone along with more times than I count. But this time, he shut her down. He told her not to speak like that about my wife. Reading that message, I felt a small flicker of satisfaction. I continued reading their messages and felt a weird sense of pride in the fact I was doing all of this. And the best part was, Josh didn't even know what I had in store for him. I continued doing the ideal housewife duties while also maintaining my full-time job. I was getting tired, however. The days were long and the nights even longer. Cooking elaborate dinners, keeping the house spotless, and always having a smile ready for Josh, who never offered to help with any chores. I knew I couldn't keep up this act much longer. I had enough evidence for the divorce, and one night I decided it was time. I stayed up late staring at my computer screen searching for a divorce lawyer to take on my case. Unfortunately, finding a divorce lawyer within my budget was not an easy task when trying to do so quietly, but after many, many days, I finally stumbled across one. Julia Richardson. Her profile was really impressive, and I sent her an email to schedule a time to meet. The next day, I checked my email and she told me her availability. Meeting with her in secret was a nerve-wracking experience. I would often tell Josh that I was meeting up with coworkers for an outreach event held by my job, then come back home and continue my housewife duties. The first time I sat down in her office, I was a bit nervous. Julia was a sharp-eyed woman. She listened intensely as I explained everything. She told me to gather as much evidence as I could, and the more proof that I have, the stronger my case will be. That was when I showed her the screenshots on my phone. She told me that it was almost solid and to get a bit more. So I did just that. The emotional turmoil was intense. I often cried myself to sleep. I also tried to talk to my friend Jess about the situation, but I knew I couldn't tell her everything. Josh was oblivious to how I really felt. He showered me with compliments and affection. It was almost laughable the way he thought he could hide the monster that was talking to Rachel. After one night of checking Josh's phone again, I noticed Rachel said something that was shocking. She asked that since I was being the perfect wife that he wouldn't have to come be intimate with her anymore. He replied that this is exactly what he meant, that they would no longer be meeting up and sleeping together. This was it. This was the evidence that I needed for my case. I screenshot this thread and go to bed. The next day, I met up with Julia with some hard evidence that he had been cheating with his ex. She tells me this is exactly what we needed, and we can proceed. She's forming up my case, and all I can think about is being free. She crafted our case against him, and I headed home. I planned my escape for the next day, and I was ready to go out with a bang. The next night came, and I had everything just right. I made him his favorite comfort foods. First, I served him some Caesar salad with fresh Parmesan. Then I served him a perfectly grilled ribeye steak prepared exactly how he liked it, medium rare. The sides were creamy garlic mashed potatoes and baked asparagus. For dessert, I made him his favorite dessert that his grandmother used to make, an apple pie. When Josh saw all that I made for him, his eyes widened from excitement. He downed all the food and praised me at how good it was. As I smiled back at him and told him how much he deserved it, I felt a bittersweet satisfaction. He told me he wanted to show how much he appreciated me and took me to the bedroom. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel nauseated by his touch. Instead, I felt a cold, detached feeling. I was ready to end this charade. I excused myself to the bathroom and came back out with his favorite clothing on me. He couldn't keep his eyes off of me, and then we got to action. This was the best I ever screwed him. Even better than our wedding night. After about 10 minutes, he was out like a light. I effed his brains out. I looked over at him as he slept peacefully. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter and quietly packed up the rest of my belongings and headed to the car. I headed to my brother's house where he lived a couple states away, and the whole car ride I blasted my favorite pop music. I felt the weight of Josh flow away as I sang my playlist. After a couple hours, I had finished my playlist and was left alone with my thoughts. I drove through the night, occasionally stopping for food at the diners or to use the restroom. The night was more beautiful than I could imagine. I can't even begin to describe how good I felt driving through the night to Virginia. I kept glancing at the clock on the dashboard, watching the hours tick by. It was way past midnight, and I hadn't slept a bit, and the months of exhaustion hit me like a truck, but I just wanted to put as much distance as I could between me and everything I was leaving behind. A couple weeks later, we both had to appear in court. The divorce proceedings were painful. Seeing Josh again, even in such a mundane environment of the lawyer's office, was hard. He looked broken and defeated. He was a shadow of the man he once was. The courtroom was cold and emotionless. Josh would try to explain himself in court and how he had already cut ties with Rachel, but it was too late. Each time we met, he seemed to sink further into despair. I felt a bit guilty, but quickly squashed it. He had brought it upon himself. Our interactions were brief and formal. Josh tried to talk to me, but I refused to engage. He would try to meet me in the parking lot, asking for answers and begging to find a way to work things out. I kept my responses short and formal. The evidence I had spoke for itself. I felt that there was no need for further discussion. As the divorce drew to a close, I began to feel a sense of closure. I found a new job and was making new friends in Virginia. It was hard to finally tell Jess the full extent of our relationship, but she understood what had to be done. She still comes to visit me sometimes.
Story about some of the unhinged shit one of my best friends did to me. So after I finished high school, I started working in a nightclub and I met these two girls and we just instantly clicked. I only thought I had made some good girlfriends outside of school. We were all partying together, we were hanging out together. At the time I didn't really notice, but after a little while it clicked. I'd started noticing some of like my makeup, my hair products, all of those kind of things started going missing. Even my like Tiffany & Co necklace that I had been gifted. At the time I was like a messy 17, 18-year-old, so I just thought I'd lost it somewhere. We went out one night and these two girls, they would always like to get on it when we were going partying, and I was very much against it. I wasn't interested at all. They had offered me some and I said no. Then I woke up the next day, I had completely blacked out, had no memory of anything, and I felt awful. So awful to the point that I actually took myself to the ER the next day because I think they drugged me. So I sat in the ER for like 2 hours, but I had to go start work, so I literally just left because I was like, I don't have time to be here. This bar that I worked at the time had absolutely no RSA at all, and the most random wild shit used to happen to them. It was a whole mess. I got promoted to bar manager at 18 years old. No idea what I was doing, but anyways, it was a fun time. So one of the girls, let's call her Chloe, she was particularly more horrible to me at the time. Every time we were around guys, she would always like insult me or just like have little goes or just find any way to put me down. There was one night that Chloe and I were going out by ourselves and I just had this really weird feeling. I had a feeling that something was off, so I decided to go through her messages between her and the other girl that all three of us were friends with. And in these messages, I found them talking so much horrible shit about me, like how fucked my teeth were and all of these things. And that got to me so much that I ended up getting braces at 19 because it made me so insecure. I don't know why, but I still remained friends with these girls after they'd just been talking all this horrible shit about me. I was in a situationship with one of the security guards there who I ended up dating for like 5 years. And she was always super flirty with him. And I didn't really think anything of it because, you know, everyone was kind of flirting with everyone, especially when they were drunk. They had decided that they were going to have some drinks after work. And I said, yeah, no worries. Like Chloe, you can stay at my house. And also this man, you can stay at my house as well. I was sober because I was driving home. Anyway, so they both jump in the back seat of my car. I actually didn't find this information out till later, but I was driving home. Turns out she was like trying to give him, he thought he was like getting into some freaky like stuff. But I was completely oblivious to the fact because I had no idea what was going on in the backseat of my car. After a few more weeks of this guy and I like seeing each other, he sat me down and he was like, oh, there's something I've got to tell you. And he had told me that this whole time Chloe had been like messaging him and sending him messages, naked photos, provocative things, and essentially was trying to meet up with him and like sleep with him, even though I was seeing him and she knew that I really liked him. Like I used to talk to her and say, I really like this guy, like I think this might go somewhere. Meanwhile, she was trying to sleep with him the whole time behind my back. After he told me this, he had sent her a message and said, you know, like you've got to come clean to Ashley, like you've got to tell her everything that's been going on. She completely tried to lie her way out of it, and she tried to say that he was coming on to her, this was all his fault. And by the time that this happened, I had sent her a message and I was like, what the fuck? You know, she tried to gaslight me and say nothing was happening, even though I had seen all the text messages, I'd seen the photos that she'd sent him. She ended up just quitting her job because she actually couldn't end up facing me after that. I completely just cut her out of my life. I was like, that is the final straw. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other things that she did to me in there, but this was like 12 years ago. After about 2 years, she randomly DM'd me on Instagram and was like, hey girl, like I just want to apologize for how everything went down with our friendship. You know, I'm so sorry. I missed you so much. I would love to be friends. Mind you, I'm still dating the guy that she tried to sleep with behind my back. And I was like, look, I don't hate you anymore. It's too much effort, but I definitely will not forget what you did to me. Girls when they're young can just be so nasty and so mean and for no reason at all. But I mean, I'm kind of happy that she had said shit about my teeth because like I ended up getting braces and now I love my teeth. But yeah, people can be shit.
Where are all the women who lost their male partners to red pill content? Because I want to know what happened.
Yeah, I'm right here. I lost one of the loves of my life. One of my best friends, had known him over 20 years since before we were born, to red pill content, and I want to talk about it today. I do think it's important to educate people and keep them aware of this. Well, it was like a 5-10 year long process to strap in, and I think one of the hardest parts wasn't accepting losing him, but having to accept that like this person, these ideologies were inside him the whole time. So his name was Jared. We grew up on streets near each other, and our families knew each other before we were born because we were all homeschooled. So obviously when we were little, I had a big old crush on him because he was the only boy my age I had ever spoken to, but he had no interest in me because he was a little kid. So for a lot of the middle years, he goes back into school. We don't talk. He's in the grade above me. But once we get into high school, we actually reconnect somehow, and I forget how, but I'm a total nerd in high school, and he is like a hockey jock. But he was always a really sweet kid. So for a while, I believed him when he swore his hockey friends must have stolen his phone in the locker room and sent this message to me on Snapchat that said, "Why don't you make yourself useful and send over a pic?" And when I was like, this is really random, like this doesn't seem like even your verbiage, what's going on, dude? They blocked me on everything on his phone. So we didn't talk for several years after that, and I found it a little bit weird that like, dude, we were talking every single day and you didn't even think to look me up and notice I wasn't even in your phone anymore. But anyways, he gets dumped by a girl who absolutely shatters his heart on college, and we actually reconnect because we match on Tinder. And at this point, he is emo, right? He has all the bracelets. He listens to heavy metal. He is very atheist. He has a lot of Satan stars and whatnot. He is the furthest point in the universe from the typical red pill boy. So when he's back in town, we actually go on some dates, and he gets really sick. So I bring him over some soup and like some cookies that my grandma, who I was living with at the time, homemade. And we have some really cute, like cuddling, watching TV, nothing else sort of dates. And it was just like old times. And then after that, he actually kind of rejects me by ghosting me a little bit, but he wants to remain friends. And I'm fine with that because we were friends our whole life. And the more I get to know about him in that point, the more I realize it's probably for the best because he's in a lot of therapy at that point, which is very important because he has such bad anxiety and depression and things like that he can't even leave his home to go out in public. And also, he's still obsessed with this girl who has blocked him on everything and he won't tell me why. But one day he says he found her address and he wants to write her a letter because he thinks it'll be super duper romantic and win her back. He had this tendency to do that, right? Like romanticize all of his actions when from the outside, like this girl has blocked you on everything. She has told you not to contact her and now you're tracking down her address. And I tried to explain to him that that's kind of terrifying behavior, but I don't think he listened to me. I do think he sent the letter and I don't think anything ever came of it. But at this point, he decides he needs to completely change his life. I think his therapist suggested getting into working out, which is the beginning of the slippery slope. So again, he's still in college, living mostly in his parents' basement. He's spending thousands of dollars now on gym equipment and getting really into working out. And watching like male motivational videos, to which I believe around this time too, he decides that he doesn't need to go to therapy anymore. And I was like, no, you still can't really leave your home, dude, and you have a lot of issues. Like you definitely are not done with that. But again, he thinks that after like a short period of time, he's just completed therapy. And around this time, a couple of his friends ask how we reconnected too, because it's a question to ask. And I jokingly am like, well, we went on a couple dates and Jared rejected me, and he insists that never happened. Like he refuses to, like he denies it to his core that he ever rejected me. I was like, it's fine, it's funny, and I'm fine with it. But anyways, we're seeing other people, we're just friends. And around this time is when I met Basement Eric, the one who SA'd me and tried to kidnap me and keep me locked in his basement, right? So that causes a lot of damage. And my brain doesn't trust me to be around boys anymore. So eventually I have to explain to Jared like why I'm always sitting on the opposite side of the room or not really seeing him anymore. And he decides again in his brain, which he has made himself out to be a good person in the scenario and coming from a good place, that he can fix me actually. Because you just didn't get hugged enough as a child and you aren't shown the proper amount of affection. So he starts forcing me to like cuddle with him and hug him even when I tell him no and to stop. And from all the working out, he's becoming a very large man that I can't fight anymore, and so it's starting to get scary when he doesn't listen to me. And he also starts making this frequent joke that we need to go out on like formal friend dates because like I just deserve to be loved and shown love. Which again, I believe came from a good place, but I was like, no, like I've been on real dates. Like I've been on fine dates. It's fine. I've been on a good date before. Like I love you, dude, but you also still refuse to leave your home to go to most places, so it wouldn't work out anyways. So because his behavior towards me is actually making my issues worse at the time, I'm in a lot of intensive therapy myself for this. I have to distance myself or make sure that his other friends are around whenever we're hanging out because he doesn't do any of this stuff in front of his other friends. And an interesting note is now that he's moved home after college, instead of hanging out with his more left friends from college, he's just hanging out with his high school friends that all are on the right. And that starts to really speed up his change in behavior. And around this time, we're both dating and seeing other people, and he never really likes any of my partners, which is fair. I had a lot of duds. But the difference is every time I had a boyfriend, I really wanted to connect him with Jared. Like, I wanted them to be friends, because isn't that the goal? He finds a partner, I find a partner, you and your best friend, like, we all live happily ever after together. But no, because whenever he got a girlfriend, I was never allowed to meet her, no matter how many times I begged and asked. And also, every time he got a girlfriend, of course, she was blonde, my height, and he kind of stopped talking to me when he was dating them. Or at least he stopped forcing me to cuddle him all the time, which was a win for me. Also, the cuddling stuff started again shortly after I started hanging out with him more, but I was able to deal with it then because time had passed. He'd also slowly started using like alpha male, beta male lingo. Like he's hanging out with his gym friends 24/7. They have daily fitness, eating, they have everything mapped out on an Excel spreadsheet. They're constantly on the grind. He's he's leaning into alpha, beta, all that terminology. I'm starting to get increasingly worried. And then he gets a new girlfriend. And this girlfriend is super religious, super conservative, right? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Jared suddenly is talking about being religious and going to church. He's going and playing tennis and doing all these things that I've never heard of him doing before. And he's starting to say some of the concerning things he would just let slip when he was one-on-one with me out loud now. I remember our very last FaceTime. He FaceTimed me after he was playing tennis with his girlfriend. I was talking about a date I had gone on, but we didn't really click. And he starts going like, you need a beta male because you have like an alpha energy. See, I'm an alpha male, so I need like a beta housewife. It's like I'm just stunned by everything that's coming out of his mouth all of a sudden. And then at some point, I kind of must have made the comment that I was like a little bit concerned about all the conservatives and the things he's been hanging around for him to say this. And he utters the phrase, well, technically, like, voting conservative is the most alpha male thing you can do, right? Because, like, you're voting to suppress minorities and women. You're maintaining your seat at the top. And in that singular moment, all hope in my body left, and I disconnected from the conversation entirely. Did not try to continue to engage. I just made a natural exit. Because also, sir, you are the furthest thing from an alpha male I've ever met. Like, you can barely leave the house, and now this girl has entirely changed your personality. And two, you are Asian. Now, you are half Asian, but if a white right male looked at you, he would say you are Asian. You are the minority that you are saying you're voting to suppress, sir. But I just let it go. I didn't say any of that because I knew in that moment he was too far gone. After that, I no longer took any of his texts and phone calls, and I finally reached out to one of his other girl friends to ask if he had ever done any of this to her, because he always insisted to me, like, cuddling and whatnot is just what friends do. Like, it's totally normal. She said that was weird. She said that she had never seen him act that way to her before. Like, I don't know why, but he was only doing this stuff to me. After I got that confirmation, I sat down and I wrote a thick Google Doc text to send to him, to be very clear as to why I am cutting communication with him. I am terrified of him. I am terrified of his behavior, the man he has grown into. I am disappointed. I lost my best friend, and he's become this person I don't even recognize or feel safe around anymore. I have to just accept that that boy that I shared so much of my life with, that I loved, is completely gone. I'm never gonna get him back, and I think about him all the time, and I feel like a part of me is just gone. And I'm so sorry that I can't let you back. But if you see this, I love you, and I really hope that you get better.
I'm going to tell you exactly why that friend hates you. And let me tell you, I learned this shit the hard way. I want you to do yourself a favor and look at all of your friends. Look at the people who have supported you in the bad times. I think that that's something we all pay attention to. We have, I think, a tendency to really notice the people who have been there for us when we're going through it. And that's amazing. That's an amazing trait to have in a friend. But do yourself a favor and pay attention to the people who celebrate wins with you. And I'm not talking about like celebrating your birthday, celebrating the holidays, doing cute little things. I'm talking about who is sitting and talking about your goals with you. Who are you having a conversation with about something that you're so fucking passionate about, that is sitting there and supporting your shit, cheering you the fuck on? I'm talking about you had something you really wanted to achieve and that person sat there and cheered you on no matter what the fuck was going on in their life. They made sure to support you. Those people, I'm telling you right now, that friend that fucking hates you, she was there when you were going through it, but she wasn't there to support you when you were doing your shit. You want to know why? Because those friends are fucking jealous of you. Those people have that little green jealousy monster on their back, and they are fucking terrified of how amazing you will be when you are successful at what your goals are. These people don't want you to be successful because they're terrified that you will outshine them, because you will outshine them. Once you realize that, you need to cut these people off because they're dragging you down, and learning that lesson is going to be fucking painful because it's going to be people that you didn't think it was going to be, but you will be better off. And I can promise you that right now.